How much do you think an average European spends on defense each year? Or to put it a bit differently, how much would security actually be worth to you? We will let you know at the end of the video. Because first, in this video, we want to look at rearmament from a very different perspective, through a lens of a city that doesn't exactly stand for weapons, but rather for alpine views, beer, cars, or brass bands. But Munich is so quickly becoming the most important hub for European defense technology in all of Europe. Why? Let's find out. In 2025, EU member states spent more in defense than ever before. The final numbers aren't in yet, but estimates are around 381 billion euros. And the reason is so obvious: Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Since the war began only 4 years ago, spending has increased by over 45%. And if you look at defense spending as a share of GDP across all EU countries, the picture becomes even clearer. Countries close to the war zone are investing significantly more on average. And Munich is just under 900 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. But drones, unmanned ground robots, and AI developed here are already being used right at the front. And that Munich is becoming one of Europe's key defense hubs probably isn't something everyone immediately thinks of. There are so many other locations that come to mind first. According to the latest report by SIPRI, the Swedish Peace Research Institute, the top 3 defense companies in the world by revenue are all based in the United States. Then, in 4th place, we have BAE Systems, based in London, the leading European player, not even in the EU. The largest EU companies follow at some distance: Leonardo in Rome, and Airbus as the only truly pan-European company. Then there's also Thales in France, another major European player. And from a German perspective, the most well-known is Rheinmetall from Düsseldorf, the only German company in the global top 20. But the thing is, this might actually change soon. Germany's defense industry can be divided into 3 strategic clusters, regions where companies and institutions in specific fields benefit from being close to each other. The northern cluster is a center for naval shipbuilding, led by ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems. The western cluster is more focused on large caliber weapons, ammunition, and logistics, the home to Rheinmetall. And the southern cluster, in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, is a stronghold for air defense, space, and land systems. Companies like Hensoldt, Renk, and Diehl are headquartered here. And when people talk about strongholds, Markus Söder is never far away. Bavaria's minister-president, who's quite the character, likes to highlight one number. 1/3 of Germany's total defense output is generated in Bavaria. And even if you sometimes criticize Söder for his massive Bavarian pride, the numbers do check out. Bavaria accounts for around 1/3 of the industrial value creation in Germany's security and defense industry. And that makes Bavaria a central location for Europe's defense industry. And what's new isn't that the industry is here, but how it's evolving and how quickly it's evolving. And a lot of that is happening in Munich, my city, where I live. Today, 1/3 of Germany's venture capital flows into the Munich metropolitan area in deep tech, future technologies like AI, space, or robotics. That's investments of well over 2 billion euros every year. And why Munich, do you ask? Because it's not just investors, it's also research. And one example here is the Bundeswehr's new Test and Innovation Center in Erding, recently opened by Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. And then there's also the University of the Bundeswehr Munich. And let's not forget LMU and TU Munich, both among the top 25 universities in the entire world. In some rankings, TUM is even number 1 in the EU, especially in fields like computer science and engineering. Recently also, the TUM Security and Defense Alliance was launched, with the goal of connecting startups and industry even more closely. Some of the companies involved are names you might not know, but their technologies are already being used in Ukraine today. For example, Helsing. This startup develops AI software that helps soldiers assess combat situations and identify military targets. The company is now a decacorn, with a valuation of over 10 billion euros, making it one of Germany's most valuable startups. Then there's ARX Robotics. They build ground robots, small autonomous mini-tanks without crews. And they support soldiers with reconnaissance, transport, and evacuation, and are already deployed in Ukraine. Quantum Systems produces reconnaissance drones used for both civilian and military situational awareness. And Titan Technologies develops systems to defend against drones, which is obviously so important today. And then there's the one that a lot of people do know, Isar Aerospace. Not your classic defense company, but a space tech startup, and still strategically important because access to space is really a key military capability. And just over a month ago, Isar Aerospace attempted to launch a new test rocket from Norway. The project was even observed on site by Friedrich Merz and Boris Pistorius. The launch had to be aborted though, because a small fishing boat was nearby. A bit of a fail. But to really understand why Munich is winning, you have to look at the power triangle of European defense. And it starts in Brussels, where the EU has finally opened the money vault. They are deploying billions of euros through funds like EDF, ASAP, and SAFE. Think of Brussels as the venture capitalists of the continent, funding the impossible tech that might sometimes be too risky for banks. But the EU doesn't decide how to fight. That responsibility stays with the nation state, and in our case, that's Berlin. Berlin is the anchor customer. With a 2026 defense budget of over 83 billion euros, including money from the EU, Berlin sets the priorities, has control of the actual army, and leads procurement. Basically, when Berlin says, we need AI drones to protect our borders, they aren't just making a fancy speech. They are placing a massive order. And this is where the trickle down happens, which brings us back to Markus Söder here in Munich. Because money doesn't just sit in government offices, it flows directly into the streets of Munich. And Bavaria really has built the perfect ecosystem, the capital, the talent, and the proximity to military. When Brussels or Berlin funds a project for AI-supported situational awareness, that cash lands directly in the offices of Munich in startups like Helsing or Quantum Systems. And that is the entire point. All of this defense spending isn't just dead money or a wasted budget. There is a massive local payoff that I'm feeling right here. We're talking about thousands of high-paying roles for engineers, data scientists, and robot technicians. It's a new era of industry, and it's super exciting because we're doing it here in Europe. And maybe sooner or later, German Munich startups will start appearing on this very list, maybe even competing with American counterparts, which would be such an amazing win for European industry. Here's what I think. We started this video with a simple question. How much does the average European pay for defense? And that number is 686 euros per year. And for the average German, it's a bit higher, 1,069 euros per year. Now, obviously that money could be used elsewhere, and me living here in Munich, I think a rent subsidy would be very nice. But after looking at the facts, I believe this money is critical for so many reasons. First, building champions. It turns tax money into growth capital for new European heavyweights, like the unicorns and decacorns we're creating here in Munich. And we're doing the same across many other regions across Europe. 2. Sovereignty. Currently, half of our arms imports still come from the US. If we want to decide our own future, that has to change. Third, efficiency. We've seen how in Ukraine, a 5,000 euro drone can take out a 5 million euro tank. We don't just need more weapons, we need the smartest tech. And for this, these new startups really are the answer. But, and this really is the big but, we need to do more, and we really need to do it more efficiently. Because when you look back at our ecosystems, the responsibilities are split in a bit of a mess. We have the EU, we have the 27 nation states, here we're showing Germany, and we have the regions like Bavaria, for example. And all of these different 27 countries have different systems, have different tanks maybe, have different drones, etc. It's just not very efficient, and it's super, super expensive. And this does make us reliant on big world powers like Washington, for example. And I really think that we need to look at these responsibilities and shift them around a little bit. For example, the EU needs to play a much bigger role in strategy and procurement. And yeah, eventually, as people know in this channel, we need to talk about a European army too. Because all the duplication currently going on between Berlin, Brussels, and all of the other capitals really is a waste of your 686 euros. We need one strategy, one market, and one goal. And of course, we made an entire video about this already, which you can check out right here. Link in the top right corner. Now, this video is supported by EUROPE DIRECT Munich, your local contact point for all questions you might have about the European Union for if you live here in Munich. But EUROPE DIRECT Munich is part of a much larger European network of over 400 centers, all with the goal of making Europe more accessible and understandable. And these centers offer a wide range of information, events, and projects, bringing Europe closer to people in the different regions. And most importantly, your voice really matters here, because through EUROPE Direct, you can send feedback and questions directly to EU institutions, helping policymakers better understand what people actually care about. So, if you want to experience Europe, engage with it, and understand it better, this really is your local starting point. And yes, we at EU Made Simple are there from time to time as well. Maybe we'll see you there. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all of our presidents who keep this channel going. See you in the next video.